Anakin Skywalker is a fairly polarizing figure, as I think most people recognize Darth Vader as being one of the greatest movie villains of all time, but the Anakin Skywalker iteration of the character certainly has some issues, from pretty bad script writing to not incredible acting performances, but I think it is actually fascinating to track the character's mind state from film to film, as it helps to illuminate why he acts the way he does in certain moments, and creates a better understanding of the character in general. In The Phantom Menace, when we first meet Anakin Skywalker, he's certainly a wide-eyed dreamer, as he's grown up in slavery with no father figure and dreams of escaping the sands of Tatooine with his mother. And when he meets Qui-Gon Jinn, for the first time in his life, he has a strong male role model who he quickly grows attached to and begins to look at as a pseudo-father figure of sorts, and he clearly thinks highly of him and all Jedi in general, as he says, "No one can kill a Jedi." Ultimately, Qui-Gon brings Anakin to the Jedi Council and asks for him to be trained as a Jedi, and even threatens to train Anakin against the Council's wishes regardless of what they say. But the Council senses something very important within Anakin, and that is his attachment to his mother and his fear of losing her. You see, leaving his mom behind on Tatooine was very difficult for Anakin, as she was the only person that was ever there for him. And this attachment to others will become a major theme for this character going forward, as Anakin is a character who naturally grows very deep bonds to the people closest to him, due to his upbringing and the fact that he's not that used to having people close to him, who generally care about him. So this is why Qui-Gon's death is a major occurrence in Anakin's story, not just because it alters how Anakin will be trained and raised, but because it introduces Anakin to the idea that the people closest to him could die at any moment, which only increases how protective he is over the people he loves. In Attack of the Clones, we see this protectiveness from Anakin a few times. First being how protective he is over Padme, as he is quick to act to protect her whenever she is in danger, and we also see this with his mother, as he can sense that she is in danger, and despite his Jedi teachings on how he should let go of his attachments and emotional connections, he rushes to Tatooine to save her from the imminent danger that he can sense. Ultimately, he arrives too late, and his mother dies in his arms, which is a really important moment as it gives us our first glance into Anakin's rage. You see, as a result of these extremely deep emotional connections, Anakin gets these extreme bursts of emotion when the people he cares about are in danger or hurt, and he'll just act out on it out of pure primal instinct in these moments. And he slaughters all of the Sand People in sight out of absolute rage because, in his eyes, they all have to pay for his mother's death. We also see this protectiveness for his master Obi-Wan, as he and Padme go to Geonosis to attempt to free him from the Separatist forces that captured him, and later in the film, he immediately rushes towards Count Dooku because he's so angry and upset over all of the dead Jedi, and the fact that he had to leave Padme behind in the desert in order to fight Dooku. By the time of Revenge of the Sith, we see that Padme has largely taken the place of Anakin's mother as the person closest and most important to him. Now being married and pregnant with Anakin's child, Anakin has a deep love for her and is naturally overprotective of Padme. So when he begins to have visions of Padme's death, well, he begins to freak out. It almost feels like a repeat of what happened to his mother, and as someone who has experienced the death of his pseudo-father figure and his mom, well, he decides he would take any action necessary in order to protect Padme. He felt like he was hopeless to stop what happened to Qui-Gon Jinn, and was too late to save his mom, but now he's become one of the strongest members of the Jedi Order, so he thinks he can put a stop to Padme's death. And while it may be a highly questionable decision from an outside perspective of sound reasoning, Anakin's turn to the dark side and against the Jedi Order makes sense from his perspective. What have the Jedi done for him? They tried to forbid him from saving his mom, and I'm sure in his eyes he feels that he could have saved her if he wasn't held back by the Jedi Order. The Jedi have also forced him to marry Padme in secret and to hide his feelings for her. So while he does generally care for many Jedi, primarily his master Obi-Wan, it just doesn't compare to his love for and need to protect his wife. But when he ultimately has to fight his former master, and sees his wife as the one who brought Obi-Wan to fight him, he completely loses it. He just turned against and burned everything he knew to the ground for his wife, all in an effort to save her. And now she's responded by bringing his former master to kill him? This obviously isn't what is actually happening, but it's what he is perceiving. So in a fit of rage, he starts choking his wife, and duels his master in a grueling drawn-out fight. And when he is ultimately bested by Obi-Wan, well, he's full of rage and hatred. He turned against the Jedi, killed younglings, and for what? Just to be brutally maimed and lose his wife anyways? But this anger and hatred quickly turns to despair after he is surgically put into his Darth Vader armor, and Sidious tells him that in his anger, he killed Padme and his child. And in episode 4, we see that Darth Vader is largely in the same mental state, as he is in a way a very hollow man, who has succumbed to the power of the dark side and his despair, and is just carrying out his master's orders. That is, until he comes face to face with his former master again. This lights a fire of hatred inside of Vader, as he wants nothing more than to kill his former master for what he did to him all those years ago. He views Obi-Wan as being responsible for the death of his child and wife, and so he doesn't hesitate to strike Obi-Wan down. But in Empire Strikes Back, we see Sidious tell Vader that the man who blew up the Death Star is the son of Anakin Skywalker. And the fact that Sidious words this news in this way is very interesting, as it seems that Sidious has worked very hard to detach Vader from the man he used to be prior to his turn to the dark side. But regardless of this work from the Emperor, Vader is still cognizant of who he used to be, and is still capable of his own desires. And we see this in Vader's fight against his son at the end of the film, as he intentionally toys with Luke and tries to get him to turn to the dark side, as he wants to overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy together with his son. You see, even as a member of the dark side, Vader still wants to be next to someone he cares about, and would much rather be next to his own flesh and blood than Sidious. And in Return of the Jedi, we see that these deep emotional connections are still very much present within Vader, as his son can sense that there is conflict within him, as Vader doesn't necessarily want to remain a lackey of sorts to the Emperor. He just feels like it is too late for him to change, and that he can't overthrow the Emperor at this point without Luke joining the dark side. But when he sees the Emperor electrocuting his son, and hears his son crying out for his help, he, for the first time in his entire life, sees that he isn't too late to save someone he cares for. He was too young to help Qui-Gon in his fight with Darth Maul, he was too late to save his mom, he was too blinded by rage and the dark side to stop his wife's death, but in this moment he decides to turn against the dark side and to climb out of his pit of despair, because his son is right in front of him, and he knows he can save him. And in his dying act, Anakin Skywalker finally returns. It is finally not too late to save someone he loved. All in all, I think at his core, Anakin always cared deeply about those who were closest to him, perhaps even too deeply, as his extreme attachments made his fall to the dark side possible. But even as Vader, I think he was still mentally of a similar mindset. He just thought all of the people he loved were dead and gone. So we saw him kind of going through the motions of carrying out the Emperor's wishes, as it was all he thought he could do. That is, until Luke managed to bring him back to the light, and his deep emotional love for his family was reignited. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis of Anakin Skywalker throughout the main Star Wars films, please consider dropping a like or subscribing, and if you agree, disagree, or just have strong Anakin thoughts, as always, I'd love to hear them in the comment section.